Good evening and welcome to the Newshour Agenda. I'm Madhavdas Gk. Viewers, India's neighbor Myanmar is reeling under the aftermath of a devastating earthquake and several aftershocks. Many lives have been lost, property damaged, and several are still missing as the country struggles to limp back to normalcy. Now, this has been widely reported by the media across the world. Today, we're going to be telling you about what really has not been spoken about. And that's going to be our focus of our discussion. As the country recovers from the deadly quake, the actions of the Myanmar military that's running the country are quite questionable. Before we tell you about that, let's give you an idea of the current situation that exists on ground.
You have no electricity, you have no running water. This is a summertime, it's very hot, and homes have been damaged or destroyed. And because, of course, there are often aftershocks, and people are being indeed scared to go inside the homes.
I saw the influx of patients to the hospitals in Naypyidaw. Hospitals were overwhelmed with patients. The medical supplies were running dry. There were electricity disruptions. In some hospitals, the generators even were not working, and shortages of running water, and they were low on fuel.
The situation there is precarious. Over 2,700 people have lost their lives and over 4,500 have been reported injured. 441 people are reported to be missing, and these are official figures that have been released by the Myanmar military. But that doesn't quite appear to be the concern as far as the ruling military junta is concerned. Let's tell you what else is happening in the country that's largely underreported. The first issue is, of course, the fact that military airstrikes have been taking place, particularly in the rebel-controlled regions of Myanmar. Remember, there are huge chunks of land where the military doesn't have complete control. They've also been accused of blocking relief aid for the victims that is supposed to come in at this point of time after this tremendous tragedy, and you can see the kind of tragic situation that exists on ground over there. Foreign media have also been blocked from on-ground reportage, ostensibly because there's no place for them to stay. Fourthly, independent analysts are also pegging the death toll at a much higher 10,000. We don't know and we cannot confirm if that is true, but those certainly are some estimates that are being spoken about. Analysts have also raised questions of a possible cover-up by the regime as far as Myanmar is concerned, raising serious questions about what really is in charge and who really is in charge over there. We'll try and understand who really is controlling Myanmar. If you look at the coal area, about 59% is, as far as the urban areas, are controlled by the military, and overall it is just 21%. Whether the contested areas are 29 and 23%, and resistance groups, particularly in the overall area, are 42%, and in urban areas are about 18%, and forest is about 8%. This is the situation that existed on ground as of November 2024. And that's why it's very, very significant. We'll be taking this across to our guests to try and understand the implications, particularly for India.
You're watching the News Hour at 10, debate number 1 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
All right, joining us at the moment is Jenny Lin. She's an activist. Joining us at the moment also is Brahma Chelani, who's a strategic affairs expert. Major General G.D. Bakshi is a retired defense analyst with us on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. And let me begin with you. Brahma Chelani, there are multiple reports that are, that are circulating. The fact that international media, the fact that international aid agencies have not been allowed to enter, and the fact that there's also been airstrikes, particularly in areas where there are rebels. It is, one tragedy after another for the people living in Myanmar, it appears, at least judging by the reports that are coming in.
Let's look at the bigger picture. Myanmar is already torn by an internal conflict. Now it faces an escalating humanitarian crisis. It's been isolated by US-led Western sanctions. Those sanctions introduced by Joe Biden presidency have shut Myanmar from the rest of the world. Myanmar requires international assistance on an unprecedented scale. Now, despite an extraordinary appeal for international help from Myanmar's military ruler, US sanctions have severely hindered America's ability to respond effectively. In contrast, India and China swiftly started delivering emergency relief. Indian rescuers and Indian medical teams are on the ground. They're helping in Mandalay and in other parts of central Myanmar that have been badly affected. In fact, the quake-battered areas are largely under government control. The issue is this, that given the present humanitarian situation, isn't it time for the Trump administration to ease the sanctions on Myanmar, to use this, the present humanitarian situation to open lines of communication with the military junta so that the international community can help ease Myanmar's plight? This is the least we can do.
Absolutely. And in fact, let me get in a voice from Jenny Lin. Jenny, you have worked in Myanmar. What is the situation on ground? What are your sources telling you as far as, the kind of toll, for instance, is expected to be much higher than what has been officially reported? And in terms of actually entering there and functioning, what are your sources there inside Myanmar telling you about how the situation as it exists on ground at the moment is?
Okay, thank you for inviting me to this segment, and I would like to thank also the rescue team that who are helping on the ground, like in Mandalay and like in Sakai, or for our people. So I'm really thank all of you. Actually, I have joined this session in really quick, so like in a rush. So if I tell something wrong or if I miss something, though, please forgive me. I would like to apologize this. Actually, I'm not on the ground. Like I'm from Newshour. Newshour is under the control of TNLA, so the revolution EAO. So the military junta have bombed. So sorry. So at the first part of the coup, I have supported CDMO. I tried to support to the CDMO. So the military junta tried to arrest me. So I have to.
But ma'am, are there reports that there are airstrikes following the earthquakes? Are they true? Can you confirm that to us?
Yeah. So after the earthquake, in 5 minutes, during the 5 minutes, the military junta have bombed near the town, maybe at the Naoning village of the town. So they bombed 3 times. Like one time of 500 pounds, and one time of 200 pounds, and one time of 150. And they also killed by machine gun.
This is actually mind-numbing. This is actually mind-numbing because Major General G.D. Bakshi, this is not what one would expect. I mean, there is a military junta over there. There are all sorts of issues. But at a time of an earthquake, and that too an unprecedented earthquake, we've seen the kind of impact that it's had 200, 300 kilometers away in Thailand. But at the very epicenter, or close to it at least, as Jenny appears to be describing, just minutes after the quake, there is actually an airstrike that takes place. What are the priorities, certainly is a big question that arises.
Sorry.
Major General Bakshi.
No, there has been a monumental tragedy. There has been a monumental tragedy in Myanmar, in Thailand, and we have seen the scale of devastation. We've seen entire skyscrapers coming down, collapsing, as we saw it very clearly on television screens in Thailand. India and China have rushed their aid teams. But, in the time of Joe Biden, he had, I'm sorry to state, India-United States relationships had touched a nadir in that particular period. And Biden and the CIA had instigated the coup in Bangladesh. They were out to create chaos, create a cookie land, in parts of Myanmar, parts of India. And this thing because they wanted to curtail Chinese influence. That nation state is in a perilous condition. The junta has never been very tender on its enemies. So if they have actually bombed, I'm sure the orders to bomb would have gone before the quake struck. I don't think they would try and take advantage of a earthquake to try and bomb. Maybe there is a lot of this propaganda based on the CIA and the other sources. but they are trying to weaken the hold of China onto Myanmar. But unfortunately, they are driving it more and more into the Chinese camp. I totally agree with Brahma. The Donald Trump administration has gone back on a number of ridiculous decisions taken by the Biden administration. They are pressing for a ceasefire and end of hostilities in Ukraine, and I'm sure they could do an absolute U-turn in the case of Myanmar also, because we cannot afford to push Myanmar into the Chinese camp. We have to see that there is some law and order that emerges over there. There is the Arakan states where the Arakan
isn't that already the case, sir? There's already an economic corridor and a pipeline, etc., that exists when it comes to China and Myanmar, or at least there is a work on that regard. So, already the kind of ties between China and Myanmar are perhaps not where India would want them to be.
Yes, but the simple fact is that it is the Arakan state which is now, endangering the Sitwe port, it is endangering the Hangui port, and it is endangering the other, the entire Chinese Belt Road corridor that they had constructed. They have laid pipelines to connect Yunnan. In case of any blockade in the Malacca Straits, in the Sunda Straits, etc., they had made an alternative route via Myanmar to offload their oil there at that port and through the pipeline pump it up to Yunnan. This was their Malacca bypass strategy. I'm afraid this is now under danger. Even our own Kaladan project is under danger because of the kind of free-for-all that is going on. Myanmar is the home of a number of these Karen National Army, Karen National Union, the Shan states. I mean, there is very little.
Absolutely. Large number of these resistance groups. But let me bring in, if I can just bring in Brahma Chalni on an important point. I mean, as it is the press freedom index as far as, working there, media, there have been all sorts of bans in the past. But, when there's a time of crisis like this, one would have imagined that things would have been very different. Even basic questions like, the health of Aung San Suu Kyi, who's the one figure who's seen as some kind of a uniting force there in Myanmar. There's very little or no information about that, Brahma Chalani.
Right now, Myanmar is reeling from the earthquake disaster. The regime's main priority is to provide relief to the people affected by the quake. But there are larger issues that we should not forget about. Myanmar, because of US-led sanctions, has emerged as the global crime capital. Rival warlords, human traffickers, drug syndicates, arms dealers, and poachers thrive in Myanmar. Myanmar has surpassed Afghanistan as the world's leading opium producer, while becoming a hub for transnational crime syndicates. Why has the situation in Manipur deteriorated? Largely because of the influx of armed militants from Myanmar that come in with their weapons, that come in with their drones. They have compounded the situation in Manipur. They're also destabilizing Mizoram. So there are these cross-border implications of what's happening in Myanmar. And to make matters worse, the US alliance with ruthless rebel groups. Today, another wave of Rohingya refugees is fleeing Myanmar. They're fleeing not from the military, but from the Arakan army. The Arakan army is an anti-junta rebel group whose brutal attacks have forced Rohingya militias into an unlikely alliance with their former oppressor, the military. This is the state of affairs in Myanmar, where the rebel groups, because of Western support, they are worsening the human rights situation. They are the ones engaging in abuses. They are the ones who are making things difficult for the ordinary people in Myanmar. Absolutely. And I think Trump should leverage the earthquake disaster as an opportunity to reverse American policy, to initiate limited engagement with Myanmar's military regime, while reevaluating the scope and consequences of existing sanctions. Broad economic restrictions have left Myanmar vulnerable to unchecked Chinese exploitation of its rich natural resources.
Right.
A more effective strategy would be to apply targeted sanctions instead of broad sanctions against the entire country.
All right. Very, very many lessons over there. Perhaps the United States would seize that opportunity. India certainly has sent its aid. But given the fact that this is all happening in the neighborhood of India, certainly some very, very important concerns that have been expressed. Jenny Lin, Brahmachalani, Major LGD Bakshi, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us this evening.